Please be seated. There's some history behind this Gospel of Matthew and Peter and the other disciples that sometimes gets sort of twisted around. It gets twisted around because historically we hear, Peter, what faith! The way he got out of the boat and intended to walk on the water. But what we have to remember about the history is how not only Peter but all of the disciples were what? Confused. Uncertain. Doubtful. They weren't only confused, they weren't only uncertain, they even doubted. Fast forward to the end of the Gospel, and then the book of Acts. And these were the people that got all of us here today. Let me give some examples about Peter. Faithful Peter, the one who could walk on water. Sort of. The verses right before this one in the Gospel are about the feeding of the 5,000. I talked to the kids about that. Where were the disciples? No way, Jose! You can't do that. 5 bread, 2 fish. It doesn't add up. And what did Jesus say? Trust me. Trust me. Work with me on this one. We could get there. The test in today's story, and I call it a test. Peter didn't get out of his own volition off the boat and walk to Jesus. He said, "You command me to get out of the boat and walk to you, Jesus." Can you do that? Will you do that? Not only confused and uncertain and doubting, testing. Save me. I don't want to drown. Another example of Peter, just last Sunday, the Transfiguration story. There's Jesus, there's Moses, there's Elijah. What did the disciples say? "We'll build you a house." And Jesus goes, "Really? Come on, guys. We can do better than that. Testify. Be witnesses." And what did they do? The end of that gospel? They remained silent. Who denies Jesus 3 times before the famous cock-a-doodle-doo? Peter. Resurrection story. Mary Magdalene comes running. He's resurrected. Who doesn't believe her and goes to the tomb? I got to see for myself. Peter. I'm not knocking Peter entirely here, because we're all here, right? So despite all of the doubt, despite all of the confusion, despite the downright rejection of Jesus Christ, what did Peter and the other disciples do? Who were they? They were steadfast. They were consistently doubtful, consistently confused, and consistently persistent. They were accountable to Jesus in weird ways, but they were accountable to Jesus to keep the movement going. And they did. They made Christianity happen. We might think that the disciples are the heroes. The hero is Jesus, because he was accountable to God. He was consistent to them. He never said, "Get off the boat and don't come back." Never. Never. And he does that to us. We might choose to come to church once a year, once every 6 months, once a month, twice a month, every Sunday. We might never come to church and be the most faithful people. But what is important is our accountability to ourselves to Jesus and to God. However we choose to be faithful. And there's so many ways to be faithful. You are witnesses of faith, or else you wouldn't be here. These parents are witnesses of faith, and their godparents, and their grandparents, and their brother, or else they wouldn't be here today presenting this child to God. We're accountable to ourselves for our faith. We're more accountable to God for being faithful. I'd like to introduce two perspectives of believers today. Take the boat behind us. There are some people that are on the shore, looking at what's happening on the boat, and there are people who are on the boat. One perspective is, perhaps the people on the boat see the people on the shore, see the people on the boat, and they're waving, "Hey, you must be having a good time." Not really knowing what's going on. They're not on the boat. They're just watching from afar, cheering it on, but watching from afar. Then there are the people on the boat. And as I had this exercise with the kids, get on the boat, get off the boat, get on the boat, get off the boat, get on the boat, get off the boat. Doing what? Christ's mission. It ain't easy. It's tough. It's tiring. Today's kind of humid. It's sweaty. We choose to do it, or we don't choose to do it. We choose to be on the shore, cheerleading, or we choose to be on the boat and off the boat, on the shore and on the boat. It's our choice. So who are you? Who do you want to be? Are you a cheerleader?
Cheerleader.
Or are you on the boat and off the boat? On the boat and off the boat requires constant activity. And what kind of activity? Mental activity? Spiritual activity? Physical activity? It's constant. Sometimes parents make the commitment for you to be a Christian. Sometimes you make that commitment. However it comes to you, you have a foundation, as the disciples had a foundation in Jesus, and then you make a choice. You stick with the boat on and off, or you become a cheerleader.
Crash.
Let's take Eleanor's baptism and everyone's commitment to her, not as cheerleaders, but as on the boat, off the boat Christians. We're here today to present Eleanor Margaret to God. God knew of her before her parents knew of her.
Got her.
And they're here to make a lifelong commitment to give her a foundation. Eleanor in her life will choose whether this is the path or not. It's her parents, her families, and all of our responsibility to give her the nuggets that she will hold on to for the rest of her life. The choice that she will make later is up to her and up to God. But she has a platform, she has a boat to get onto and off, on and off from. So will the parents, the godparents, the grandparents, her brother, you or I, give up on her ever? No. We're the Jesus in that story. It's not just about passing on Christian legacy, folks. It's not just about passing the Christian values and the morals. It's about being a legacy for her so that she can be a legacy to her friends and to her offspring and to her descendants. She will be and already is the new disciple. She's the new Peter, the new Petra. She's the new rock. And Jesus relies on her, and so should we. You know, Peter had a very interesting history as an evangelizer. If you recall, his first mission was to the people in the margins, the outsiders, the ones that were on the shoreline, off the boat, cheering, but they weren't on the boat because they weren't allowed on the boat, the Gentiles. His first mission was to the people on the margin. His second mission were to the people in the boat. He turned full circle and then evangelized to Jews. And so I think that's important for us to remember, particularly in light of our social justice mission and ministry at St. Gabriel's. In our 2018 strategic plan, the vestry has come up with 2 areas of focus for social ministry or Christian ministry. And what is that? Food, for the food insecure, and immigration through education. And so I've said this before, and I'll bring it up again. There's a few new things that I put on the bulletin board about our food ministries coming up. On September 19th, we'll be feeding people. You'll hear more of that from Eileen. That's a public service announcement that she asked me to please make today. She's in Florida. And just in September, we're going to start teaching people ESL, something that I really didn't want to do because so many people do that. But the people asked, and the faithful are responding. A third social justice ministry under education. If you have children that know some Spanish and you want them to learn to read and write in Spanish, we are already doing that. For English-speaking children families and Spanish-speaking children families. We want the kids to come together so that our community could come together. And so think of that as Christian mission, as Christian ministry. It's a little weird. We don't think about that as a Christian justice ministry. But there's a lot of justice in having a lot of bilingual kids in our culture and society these days. Let's just think about what happened in Charlottesville. Tolerance, love, compassion. All of that is part of our Christian justice ministry. And so, let's remember one thing, if nothing else. Perfection is not required. The disciples were very imperfect. Very imperfect. Perfection is attained when we go to heaven. And we will all go to heaven. Read your epistle again. It's an invitation to all. We all have to say, yes, Lord. I will accept that invitation. I will walk with you. But the invitation is open to all. And I will conclude with the last words of that epistle reading. How beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. Amen.
Amen.